Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, feminist and literary perspective. I'm your host Joel, and joining me as always is your inscrutable host Brian.
I am inscrutable, thank you.
Say hello,
Brian. Hi.
Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you.
So this week we're discussing Season 3, Episode 5, Homecoming, which is the one with the homecoming. Brian, do you want to kick us off with the Buffy Ann summary? We've
actually taken a step out this week. We're not watching Buffy anymore. We're actually just reviewing how Harold Pinter plays from the 60s. So this is all about Harold Pinter's Nobel laureate, Harold Pinter's most important work, The Homecoming, which is about the perils of masculinity and the empty space in our lives.
It's those accessible references that got us to number 40 on the Irish iTunes TV review podcasts of all time. That's actually true. That's not actually.
It's not true, isn't it? Wasn't it 38?
Or maybe we climbed at 38. It's been a good week.
Okay, so here's your Buffy. Oh, actually no. So this is season 3, episode 5. It was first aired on November 3rd, 1998, and it was written and directed by David Greenwalt, who we had most recently in Faith, Hope, and Trick. So that's cool.
Which is interesting because of Cordelia. And because of how much she features in Angel, I feel this is a very...
Oh, because, David
Cordelia,
Greenwald.
Yeah,
exactly.
Cordelia felt very Angel in this episode.
I agree. Cool. Yeah. So, Trick sells tickets for a Slayer hunt. Buffy stands against Cordelia for Homecoming Queen, and it is they, not Buffy and Faith, who are hunted and have to unite against their foes, a demon, the surviving Gorge, and twin assassins. Trick is recruited by the mayor. Cordelia faces Gorge down with sarcasm. Neither Buffy nor Cordelia wins the election. Willow and Xander kiss. I love them when they're just really short sentences.
Yeah,
that's my favorite type.
Very Friends.
Yeah, exactly.
But completely, that somebody completely overlooks the hunter who was there as well as the fourth.
Yeah, it really
person. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah,
I feel like it allows a lot of the comedy of Cordelia and Buffy competing for Homecoming.
It doesn't refer to the beautiful montage sequence in which they're competing, which is of course the most important thing about this episode. Mm-hmm. Can I absolutely fucking blow your mind with one fact that I've been saving up for this episode? Okay, so Kulak of the something clan,
Meatquat clan.
Kulak of the Meat Squad clan is actually played by Chad Stahelski. Okay. Who you might know as Keanu Reeves' stunt double for the Matrix movies. He's done a lot of work over the years. Most importantly, he directed all fucking 3 of the John Wick movies.
Really?
That guy directed all 3 of the John Wick movies, yeah.
Oh, very cool. So I was going to say Chad, but Kulak is the very distinct yellow demon with the spiny head who is actually going to be the cover art for this episode. So,
good, yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. Yeah.
And he's also going to be adapting Highlander for a reboot soon.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Highlander.
I know you do.
The entire... If you haven't listened or watched Highlander, I'm not sure why you're listening to this podcast.
Why would you listen to Highlander?
Because
you mean the song?
Yeah, what I was about to say is the entire soundtrack of Highlander, the entire soundtrack is Queen songs, so many of which were written specifically for the film, or else are used as plot devices in the film. Like it's my perfect film.
Who wants to live forever? I do. Was that a Simpsons reference there as well?
It is, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to kick us off into our now mandatory bronze banter portion by reading some statistics from my book of my ancient book of Slayer statistics.
Joel just threw something over onto the couch and then looked angry that it had made a noise, and it's like, what are you expecting?
360 degree no scope, lying on the couch completely silently. That's what I'm aiming for. So this is a list of sagas moments in Buffy.
Okay.
But it's a Venn diagram intersecting weepy and awkward.
Okay.
So a saga adjective: feeling or showing sorrow, pathetic, uncool, or awkward. Xander, according to Cordelia. This is the definition, right?
That's true.
So some of the weepy sad moments are Giles discovers Jenny Calendar's body. Buffy kills Angel. Cassie Newton drops dead at Buffy's feet.
Oh, that was sad.
Yeah, Tara's death.
Yeah.
Buffy disowns Giles.
Oh.
Obviously Joyce's death and Buffy's sacrifice to save Dawn. So like a lot of tear jerkers there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
On the awkward side, we have everything about Jonathan. Giles singing a very emotional song at the espresso pump, which I don't know if I agree with, but maybe I'm not impartial here. Xander meeting his own uber successful double, and they're in the intersection is Willow trying to get her mom's attention by coming out as a witch is an intersection of weepy and awkward in the stag Venn diagram for Buffy. And I feel like that's one of those diagrams where like you start off with a lot of information to really winnow it down to like a perfect piece of information.
Sure.
But yeah, that's all you need to know about the emotional arcs in Buffy, so you can now stop listening.
Yep, that's it. See yous.
So what we were talking about before we got started is I've been playing a lot today and a lot this week of Borderlands 3, which is a new video game.
It was released last Friday, I want to say.
And it's, a classic kind of, you go to different alien planets, you kill loads of people, you get loot, weapons, etc., etc. But what it is significant for, and what it's often completely not under the radar, not really brought to the attention for, is this complete proliferation of queer characters, and it's been doing this since 2009, and its most recent previous to this game was in 2012, in which your main kind of gung-ho soldier male character was bisexual. A lot of the supporting characters were bisexual or gay men or gay women. There was a real a diversity rather than just one token representation, and they've upped the game even more in this, in the sense that I think at least 2 of the main NPCs are trans characters played by prominent trans creators in real life. One of your player characters is non-binary.
Trans creator is a very funny phrase. Anyway, go on.
Why? Yeah,
exactly. But it sounds like it's people who create trans people. Wait,
trans science.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, don't ever use that
Dr.
phrase again.
I will.
Oh, that sounds awful. Okay.
Well, no, it's meant in the purest sense.
Okay.
But the character which I opted into, because I just thought he was cool, turned out to be a pansexual Irishman.
Yeah.
Which is played by an Irish person, and uses authentic Irish slang like acting the maggot, or says I'm really dying for a pint in a way that sounds convincing as opposed to staged Irish.
He uses the word crack sometimes, not in a way that's incredibly uncomfortable. So
he does use crack appropriately. So yeah, it's really cool, and it's like
so there are 4 main characters, 2 of whom are women, and I think one of them might be asexual potentially, but the other one anyway. But the only 2, there's no straight cis male character.
Yeah, in terms of your character classes.
Yeah, because one of the other characters you can play, I think, might be a robot, but is non-binary and wears like a non-binary flag on their jacket and stuff like this. It's really cool.
They make a point of saying often in transhumanist fiction you have the thing of robots being non-binary by default because they don't have a gender by virtue of their creation, because they're not human. But they make the point no, this person actually does have a non-binary gender, in addition to being all the robot stuff going on. And there's a lot of specific conversation in this weird silly game, in which most recently I helped a robotic porta potty stall launch itself into orbit. So it's quite it's quite a childish game in some ways, but at the same time they do have this conversation about gender and sexuality, where in this world where you can be reconstructed after death and replicated, and nothing really has any permanence, what does a person's gender mean? What's the permanence of it then? The essentialism or the personal essentialism of it. So they actually are having these conversations while keeping it light, which is such gold dust. It's really, and it's getting these, concepts in front of an audience that might not necessarily seek that out or feel that they will play a quote unquote kind of gay game, and you have sympathetic characters who are queer. You have some of the horrendous cannibalistic villains are queer as well, so it's a real sense of that this is just a natural world in which people are what they are. It's really cool, and
it's nice because for the most part video games has this real huge gap in it, whereby in a really great way queer women have really featured much more heavily in the last couple of years than they would have previously in video games. So you get the Last of Us, spoiler for The Last of Us, but the DLC has a really interesting, wonderful storyline about how Ellie is queer. A young queer woman as well. A young queer woman, exactly. So it's not kind of suggesting that queerness is something that's only appropriate for older people or for adults. And in the most recent trailer, there's a really beautiful trailer for that movie where she's kissing a bisexual woman, and it's just like, oh wow. Or other major queer
Dishonored, Life is Strange.
Exactly. But you have a real lack of queer male characters in video games. Like, I mean, probably to some degree due to the fact that the majority of people developing video games are men, and probably and usually straight men, I would probably suggest.
Yeah, probably, well, majority by statistical definition, yeah.
Yeah, and would trend towards being more comfortable with developing queer female characters. So there's a real crappy, like, double oppression there going on in some ways, whereby they both see queer women as less offensive, which is diminishing of queer women, and they see queer men as being unacceptable or what am I trying to say here, distasteful. So having like specifically no straight men in this game is actually so cool. You know, it's awesome. And yeah, so basically any queer male characters you can play really in video games these days, it's kind of when you can play them where they've essentially turned off gender limits for romancing options in video games, like RPGs and stuff.
So it's an interesting question about queerness in games, which is if your character is able to, say, kiss people of different genders purely because the game doesn't distinguish a non-player character's gender, that's, you know, it's better than nothing, but it's not really it's almost like a glitch or a quirk of programming, as opposed to something that's thoughtfully being written into it. Whereas in something like this, even when it's an offhanded comment, you know, kind of a joke line as you're shooting someone about, you know, with one of the male characters saying, "Oh, my husband hates when I do this," that kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, that's
thoughtfully put in.
Exactly. Like Mass Effect 3, I think, had a specifically one character who could only romance as a male shepherd. Or is that right?
Yeah, Shepherd being the main character's name rather than as a character class being a Shepherd. No, there was.
Dragon Age also has a specifically person who you can only romance as a male character as well.
Which is an interesting point from your perspective as well, because it's a quirk of video games in this way. Because yes, there's a way that you can make characters. The medium almost supports gender fluid characters and bisexual characters more, because often you make these things ambiguous, and because it's such a player input, you have the choice there. So I think it's an interesting experience from your perspective as well, because, you know, it's great in video games because of the medium. It's often easier to do gender non-conforming situations and bisexual situations because so much of it can be left ambiguous to the player input. But for people who specifically identify as gay and only have, say, single-sex attraction, that tends to be, as you said, rarer and more erased because you have...
it requires deliberate action, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. You need to write in specifically. So the fact that is something that is... And also, specifically in Borderlands, there are characters who are explicitly gay and lesbian as well, which just requires kind of more thought. And I think what's prompting that in the last 5 or 10 years is more independent creator control, more realization in a post-MCU world that kind of, frankly, giving people what they want is actually quite profitable, because people will support your game if they see their interests and themselves represented in it. I think it's the fact that the traditional male queer narrative in film and TV for many years was either that they died of AIDS or they had a difficult coming out story. Yeah. Which is why there's maybe a disproportionate amount of gay men represented in film and TV, even though it's not necessarily positive representation in all cases. It's a difficult one to make a video game out of, though. Yeah. Whereas queer women, you know, if we have your RPG games, your slice of life games, I can see how that's happened. But I think we also have a case, as with other mediums, where fans are now starting to age into a range where they're actively making the content that they once loved, or rebooting or reinventing it, which is why there's this wave of, you know, now we can just have this and also have the original content, and neither has to be compromised. Like, we still have a game like Borderlands, which is a little juvenile, which is very violent, and also has this progressive content, and they don't have to be seen as mutually exclusive to each other, is my point.
Closing this out, if you're looking to play the perfect queer game of all time, go off and play Gone Home.
I knew you were going to say Gone Home.
Yeah, Gone Home was one of my favorite games of all time. It's just wonderful, and it has an incredible soundtrack. It's all Bikini Kill and Heaven to Betsy, which was Corin Tucker's band before Sleater-Kinney. So go treat yourself to playing Gone Home.
Yeah, it's
please.
a walking simulator in a 90s kind of gay girls teenage bedroom abandoned basically kind of thing.
Wonderful.
Which I was quite scared playing, even though there's no
enemies
enemies in it, but it's just something about exploring an empty house that spooked me out.
So Buffy.
Do you
want to hear something interesting? Okay, so those the two. So yeah, this is the episode where Buffy and Cordelia are competing for a homecoming queen. Buffy feels like she's being written out of the school yearbook because no one told her to turn up to the photos that day, because Cordelia forgot to, basically.
Yeah.
And
can I, just before we get into this, can I just give a kind of a natural language kind of framing for what the episode?
Okay.
So in this episode we have, as you said, homecoming is coming up. Cordelia's campaigning for it. Mr. Trick has organised Slayer Fest 98, which is getting together all these hunters to kill both Faith and Cordelia. Buffy gets burnt by kind of the experience that she doesn't have like a normal girl life in the school, and so wants to become homecoming queen and runs against Cordelia, and there's some hilarious mix-ups, and they both end up getting hunted by the Slayer hunters while there's some just teenage drama happening in the background.
Too right. The twins, the German twins, Joel, they literally have not a single other acting credit.
Okay.
I looked at the IMDb pages. Nothing else except for Buffy in this episode. They don't have a single line in this episode either.
They don't. I don't know if they got their SAG card for this one.
Like, what the fuck? They just put like post on like whatever Craigslist, what's the golden pages, being like, we need twins, please.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just someone that, someone new in California. Yeah.
Maybe.
They have ridiculously stereotypical German names as Hans and Frederick Grubenstaller.
Oh, wow.
And they're supposedly wanted in Germany for capital murder, terrorism, and the bombing of Flight 1402, which is just really evoking a kind of a very generic 1980s fear kind of thing. Because for one thing, Germany doesn't have capital punishment.
They did Die Hard, basically.
They did. They were the Die Hard guys with their advanced Slayer hunting tech. Like, it was a 6000 series cell phone, which was like the size of my fist, that they used to dial into a modem to basically like use some 1980s era NORAD graphics to track them down.
They're using they're actually using the same computer program that Lexi, is that her name, Lex, hacks into the system in Jurassic Park with, where she's like, we're in, everything's online, we have power for everything, and basically she's just like exploring like a 3D world of blocks, being like, where's the block that I need to click on?
Like when we thought that computer programs would actually involve us basically going into the computer and picking physically files out of cyber cabinets and stuff, it's exceptional. And the two of them and their weird cravat wearing daddy all wear very comic terrorist black turtlenecks as well. It's very good.
So yeah, this episode is like kind of thematically it's pretty interesting. It's kind of light though, I found. So obviously Buffy feels left behind by this world, and she's had to either mature too quickly or has been left behind. It's kind of unsure, and she feels like she can't be a normal teenager anymore. It's kind of sad. There's a scene where Buffy goes up to her one of her favorite teacher who gave her a really inspiring Maya Angelou to Amelia Earhart, American.
It probably went the other way around, to be fair.
True. American brilliance of women. And she goes up to her and she says, I need a reference letter for Principal Snyder saying that I'm wonderful. And the teacher's like, sorry, and you are... And Buffy's just like devastated that her favorite teacher does not remember her.
Yeah. Which I was convinced I recognized her, but it wouldn't be from anything we both knew. But it turns out she played Vash, which is a fan favorite recurring character in the Next Generation of Star Trek, which is a show I've mentioned once or twice on this podcast before.
Never heard of it.
But yeah, it's quite sad, and we don't get to see a lot of like Buffy makes a point to, she visits Angel at the start of the episode. She's recovering. She makes a point that she's trying really hard in school. She's taking on her makeup test. She's really making an effort. She's starting to think about college, and we don't see a lot of Buffy being inspired by her academic schooling, and the idea that she took a class on contemporary American heroes and like it changed her life. And then the teacher didn't remember who she was. That's quite sad,
Yeah, and additionally, this ends the era of Scott Hope, thank fucking God, because he asks her to the prom and then dumps her because she has lost the fire he thought she had, essentially. We, of course, don't see Scott again, but he is referenced in Season 7 as gay and
Conversations
having
with dead people.
spread rumors that she was a lesbian, I think, as well. So
it's a weird one. I'm pretty sure we mentioned this before, but just to really hit the note, it's because it's like the reference also comes from the fact that Fab Filippo it plays a gay character on Queer as Folk.
But is actually married to a woman now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I had him. He's gay face. So
he does have gay face. If you don't know what gay face is, we'll never be able to explain it to you. But it does exist.
Every so often, I do this thing where, like, if someone says like, "Oh, is that person gay?" I say, "Oh yeah, definitely." They're like, "How do you know?" And I've used this line a couple of times. And I don't understand how they haven't, like, how I've gotten away with it. I've been like, "Yeah, we can just smile at each other," and they're like, "Oh," and they don't really ask any further questions.
Yeah, it's the pheromones.
So there you go.
It's like, have you told that story before about the time you brought your parents to a gay bar?
Oh yeah, so we brought my parents to the Front Lounge, which is one of the gay bars in Dublin. My father fucking loved it because they were playing
all his favorite music.
All his favorite music. He loves George Michael. He loves. He doesn't love Madonna, weirdly. He loves Kylie Minogue. He loves Gloria Estefan for some fucking reason. But essentially, I brought them in. And when we sat down, I was like, "Oh yeah, you're lucky you got in." They're like, "Oh, what, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I had to give a nod to the bouncer, basically to be like, it's fine, they're with us, they can be let in." And they're like, "Oh God, yeah, sure, okay." And every like a couple of times since, they've been like going past them, like, "Oh yeah, we had to get Brian to let us in, essentially." And I had to explain to them at some point that no, they can walk into whatever fucking bar they want.
Yeah, they just can't walk out.
So. Yep, Scott Hopes breaks up with her because she's lost her fire, and so it's all like a combination of Buffy having getting hit with all these consequences for being the Slayer and not being able to participate in normal life.
Yeah, and she has a great joke where she says how she feels invisible, like no one remembers her, and she's not even going to be in the yearbook because specifically Cordelia forgets to tell her. And she asked them, "Am I invisible? Can you see me?" Which is obviously a callback to
Marcy in season 1. Yeah,
great pull on the name. I was just going to say Clea Duvall when she turned invisible.
Yeah, out of mind, out of sight.
Which interesting was also a
Buffy and Cordelia
prom queen kind of thing.
Yes, it was. It was the Maid Queen.
Not prom queen. Obviously not prom queen, but like.
Yeah, it was. So it was Maid Queen, and Buffy and Cordelia are very heavily associated in that episode. But it's kind of the original episode where Cordelia. It's certainly the original episode for us where we discussed Cordelia being a shadow self to Buffy, which of course is a very prominent theme in this episode. So this episode really highlights the fact that Cordelia is the shadow self of Buffy wandering around, because Buffy allows that shadow self to really take over her persona in this episode. And the episode, the word that I was trying to get to last week when I came up with furry was animus, of course. So the animus in Jungian theory.
Oh, obviously, and also I presume you're also referencing the main plot device from the Assassin's Creed series, the animus device.
Of course. Yeah. So Cordelia is wandering around as a shadow self for Buffy that has really taken over Buffy. So Buffy allows herself to be completely consumed by the idea of being popular, being remembered, being a normal girl. And she allows that to distance herself from her own persona. So Mark Fields highlights this as essentially we were talking last week about
with confidence, Brian.
Individuation, which is of course integrating the shadow self into oneself, and how that has to be a thing that you do repeatedly over your life. It's not a one act; it's a consistent process. And if you think about it, even the title of this episode is Homecoming, which is like a coming home to oneself, a return, a reintegration, etc. So he also says there are a couple of different homecomings in this episode. There's the coming home of Angel, obviously, which is a big one.
Who's learned how to wear a shirt again. He's been re-educated.
Barely, because he can't put it up, notably. But
what a tragedy.
Yeah, Willow and Xander kind of come home to each other to some degree. I'm not sure about that. And he also highlights the homecoming of... Yeah, no, that's it. Never mind. But...
Mr. Trick finds his home with the mayor, which is...
yeah, sure. Yeah. But yeah, so all about shadow selves. So Buffy really does kind of by the end, the conclusion is that both the shadow self in Cordelia understands Buffy a bit better and gets to walk in Buffy's shoes when she intimidates Hector Gorch out of the show, and Buffy understands her desire to be Cordelia a little bit better and realizes that she can't fully do that while being herself. So yeah, There you go. There's our Jungian quota hit for this week.
And we have, whenever we kind of touch on the Jungian stuff, the shadow self of Cordelia, Buffy also draws on her references to Henry High, to her previous high school, where she was Fiesta Queen and she was on the cheerleading squad. And she said, an interesting line where she said that the yearbook was a story about me. A
story of me, I think she said.
A story of me, yeah.
It was weirdly poetic. It was a story of me. Yeah.
Well, actually, what made me think of is there's a few episodes, a few like recurring themes in Welcome to Night Vale, where it's a story about you, a story about us, etc.
Those episodes were good.
Yeah, but it evoked the same thing. I was like, huh, she really did just like leave behind her entire fucking life to come here, didn't she? And she has a great line where she talks about when she challenges Cordelia, and Cordelia's like, what should I be afraid of, the Slayer? And she's like, no, not the Slayer, this is Buffy we're talking about, and Buffy will destroy you. And it really does zone in on the incredible emotional labor it requires for Buffy to basically run two lives simultaneously. Like, they make jokes about it, but she really is trying to like balance two very distinct things.
Yeah, the line is, you've awakened the prom queen within. And playing underneath this interaction between Buffy and Cordelia, of course, is like fight music, and like, we found out what the monster is, we know how to kill it. So that's what's
we're heading to its lair.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But yeah, this episode really is a very high school episode. So you have that really classic high school photo taking like sequence, which really reminded me of Freaks and Geeks, which is
absolutely
the opening of Freaks and Geeks is obviously them all taking their high school yearbook photos in the 70s. Freaks and Geeks, another great shout. Go watch that if you haven't. Yes, that's a wonderful sequence where they all like, have the moment where it's like, oh, what awkward face are they going to make? And Oz doesn't make any face. He just looks exactly the same as he always does, which is great.
They had a sequence where they were kind of having a party with red cups, which is such an iconic American image. I was in Tesco the other day and I had this moment where I walked past the red cups and I'm like, do I want to buy these? I didn't this time, but I will eventually.
You will, of course. But yeah, no, it's kind of one of the more like standard episodes, or the more stereotypical episodes in terms of showing high school life. This all, of course, culminates in Buffy and Cordelia being sent to the prom in a limousine together because Buffy is supposed to be going with Faith after Scott breaks up with her. It's Faith, who's actually very supportive and nice in this episode. She's just really good to Buffy. She does that classic, important role of being like, well, fuck Scott, and like being really funny towards him in the end, and then offering to be Buffy's like friend, going to the prom with her,
convincing his new date that he has chlamydia or whatever, or gonorrhea.
Yeah, but we have to note in this episode, like, I mean, the person who is most of an outsider status on the outside and losing out on a youth is Faith.
Oh yeah,
Faith,
yeah.
This is Faith's only opportunity to go to the prom. Homecoming is with Buffy. No one's else going to ask her. She can't go to high school because she doesn't have the money, for one thing, to like afford. She's
many factors. She's a teenager with no stable home life. She's not in school, and it's one of the things that we look at. It's such a fascinating Slayer, but opposite Buffy. And while I have a lot of affection for Kendra, I think is why she wouldn't be able to go the distance necessarily, is because Faith is in some ways more similar to Buffy, but a Buffy who never had the opportunities Buffy had. Like, Buffy's whole thing about is how she lost the life she had. Yeah. Faith never had it.
Yeah, that's true. Importantly, like, Kendra kind of like shows Buffy's like Kendra is the more conservative side of Buffy, and it brings out the wilder sides of Buffy, and that doesn't play well on camera in the sense that like portraying Buffy as the cool bad girl doesn't work. Buffy isn't cool or a bad girl.
Yeah.
Whereas Faith is genuinely cool, and it makes Buffy seem more conservative, more tame.
Yeah, when they're training together. Okay, I love Slayers training together. I love the whole montage.
Absolutely.
They both look great and energetic.
Faith is wearing like cut off jeans.
I was going to mention the cut off jeans. I haven't written it here.
She looks fucking incredible.
But the important thing, and I don't think we should overlook it given the context of this podcast, is they portrayed women who are strong and athletic without being sexualized.
Yes.
And it's not male gazy, and they're definitely they're healthy. They're exercise, and it's all this stuff that Xander in character kind of objectifies, but the show doesn't. And it's just it's a very positive portrayal of two women trying to get stronger together
and helping each other actively. It's great.
But yeah, I love the cut-off jeans.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed when I was looking at them. I was like, do I want cut-off jeans?
Also, in this episode, very importantly, we get the conclusion, the crescendo of the Willow, Xander, will they, won't they?
Willow, won't they?
Willow, won't they? Because
Gotcha.
they do end up kissing in this episode, and it's fucking awkward as shit. Whoever suggested that these two had chemistry or should, end up together, I just don't believe it.
I don't believe it as a storyline. I don't criticize it as a storyline. I think I can see them mistaking that they should have some attraction to each other because of their long and intimate attachment, but I kind of don't believe that Willow would do it.
Yeah, me neither.
Particularly when she got to the point where she started dating Oz, when she kind of realizes Xander only ever paying attention to her when she wasn't paying attention to him, where she kind of said kind of, fuck you, I'm kind of going with Oz, and I don't feel like she would backstep. I 100% believe Xander would do it, because he has a line where he talks about how he's a senior now, he has a girlfriend, it's meant to be easy. It's like, yeah, but it's never going to be easy for you.
Yeah, even look at Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered. He was done with Cordelia so quickly, or when he was all into Faith earlier in this season. It's why in a couple of episodes when, okay, this is spoilers for a couple of episodes coming, but when in Lover's Walk, Cordelia and Oz find them, what happens eventually is that Oz does forgive Willow and they get back together, and it's convincing and genuine, Willow genuinely does regret what she does, and Xander and Cordelia do not get back together because Xander was not nice to Cordelia.
Yeah.
Actively isn't. And isn't good enough for her, actually. Fuck you, Xander. But yeah.
Please be on our show. What was it? What was it I saw about Nicholas Brendan recently?
Nothing good, probably.
No. This is not wrong. This is the opposite of that. I'm going to say, whatever our criticisms are Xander Harris, our criticisms are not of Nicholas Brendan. He was tweeting about, or he's posting about, I think, the climate strike, about how great it is to be, they had a shot of them all at some convention recently, how it's great to be back with his friends. It was all positive stuff. He seems like a perfectly nice person. But we don't agree with Xander Harris's decisions. Oh, he was posting Instagram pictures of him with Xander Harris, a Funko Pop that someone gave him. And
oh, that's cute.
he takes them in the car with him, buckles them up, and yeah, that's nice.
It is nice. It's just that he has been arrested for assaulting his girlfriend and stuff.
Okay, well, let's not bring the tone completely down.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's get back into this fictional hunting of women.
I did Wikipedia that just because I was fairly aware of it, but I was I'll just make sure of this. But yeah, he was. So I'm just kind of oh.
Okay, well, obviously that's double plus on gosh, yeah.
Yeah, not good at all. Anyway, don't come on our podcast, Nicholas Brennan. Send your twin brother instead, please.
Yeah.
So in this episode, we also get the hunting sequence generally. They don't actually, did they refer to it at some point? The fact that it's just the greatest game.
They don't, but I don't know. It's one of these things that's so bet into what they're doing that I don't know if they reference it.
You know what? I'm not sure how textual it is for a lot of people. We recognize it as being a huge influence on all science fiction and just media generally. Is the idea that you set up a big game hunt, and the target of the hunt is a person, and this is the greatest game of all.
So you hear it on Simpsons, it's we'll hunt the greatest game of all, man. That's the iconic.
And it's made textual specifically in the movie Zodiac, because there is a one of the plot points of the movie Zodiac, which is an incredible film. It's one of my favorite films, I'd say. It's by David Fincher, and it's about the Zodiac Killer, before the Zodiac Killer was a huge meme. But one of the plot points is that one of the suspects is really into the greatest game, the movie, and a lot of the Zodiac letters actually refer to the greatest game.
And if I can just say for context, so basically it comes from The Most Dangerous Game, which is a short story that was written by Richard Connell in 1924, so it's quite an old text, and it features a big game hunter from New York City who ends up on an island and is hunted by an aristocrat. So it's permeated throughout popular culture, specifically American popular culture in many ways. And it was a famous adaptation that Orson Welles starred in. So yeah, that is what's happening here essentially. Slayer Fest 98 is the greatest game. Or most dangerous game, actually. We've been
the most dangerous game. It's the most dangerous game.
Yeah.
Apologies for everyone who had to listen to all that. Oh yeah, actually, you were saying earlier that Buffy was listing herself as all these queens, and there's this really great line where Cordelia says, "Whatever you were, guacamole queen" or something.
You were 3.
Yeah. Apparently, that's a Frank Zappa reference. I'm not sure if it is, because Frank Zappa had that in a song.
See, I presumed it was linked to the fact that Buffy earnestly says that she was Fiesta Queen at Hemery High.
She does. But apparently, it's a line from his Frank Zappa song. It could be complete coincidence. I don't think Cordelia listens to Frank Zappa. but I wouldn't be. Yeah.
Yes. In terms of the hunters, can I just say Slayer Fest '98, iconic.
It is iconic.
It's a really, it would actually be a great name for a podcast. But the idea of these hunters all trying to hunt down the Slayers and having your different types of hunters. So you have Lyle Gorch, who is the Texan style vampire who's recurring from bag eggs, who comes along with his kind of very one-dimensional kind of American image of, a quote-unquote kind of a bimbo trophy wife, Candy. You have obviously Kulak, who's the Miqua clan, who's a demon. Again, a style of demon that is very how demons look on Angel specifically.
Yeah.
Bright colours and all that kind of stuff. Obviously the German terrorist we mentioned. But also completely in the background, unmentioned in the Buffy Am summary, is a hunter who is very much in this. His name is Frawley. He's only referred to in the episode as Jungle Bob by Buffy, but he's very much in the mode of Gib Kane, who was the guy who came to hunt the werewolves in Phases, I want to say.
Yeah, it's Phases.
And he's often confused by people, by fans, as being the same person. But specifically, Gib Kane was all about kind of protecting humans from monsters, and this guy just wants to kill some humans. But again, another example of he gets himself trapped in one of his own bear traps, and like 3/5 of the way into the episode gets his first line, and Buffy comes along to pump him for information, and then leaves him. And like you can very easily bleed out in a bear trap.
Yeah, though aren't bear traps like designed to be able to release?
Okay, but he was incapable of getting out of it. There was a lot of shocks to illustrate that.
It's true.
Yeah.
So one of the big things about this episode is that the mayor is introduced with his obsession with cleanliness.
Yeah. Mayor Richard Wilkins III.
Exactly. He's immediately realised, he walks onto the stage so well acted. I have no idea what the actor's name is, but it was really good and very enjoyable portrayal. He's very calm and very, I want to say, quite like sardonic, because I don't know what sardonic means, but he's great.
Harry Groener.
Mm-hmm. So at one point he says, he's talking to his deputy mayor, I want to say,
Alan,
who is the one who Faith kills later on in the season, and he says to him, you have all my faith. So very much highlighting what's going to be coming for Faith in this season. He also just, he kind of represents structural imbalance and corruption. So he's a great character, and he's one of my favorite villains of the show.
Oh, absolutely. For a couple of reasons. I will say that so the guy's listed as deputy mayor in this episode, his name's Alan Finch, and that comes out later, obviously, when he's killed. But the mayor is great for a number of reasons, because he isn't necessarily a villain in the sense that he doesn't necessarily have the Slayer slang, but he does have a certain separateness, a certain... he's very glib and very unthreatened by the various monsters in Sunnydale. It makes sense, kind of ideologically, that the person who's mayor of this town, which is clearly cursed, will be the one most kind of in line with it and most like drawing from it. He just the fact that he brings in a convincing paternal energy that's parallel to Giles's, and conservative in a way which is not Slayer related.
That's a really interesting point.
It's very. He talks specifically in this episode how children are the future. They need to be nurtured and they need to be controlled. So for a show which is so much about feminism, about women's experiences, and specifically young women who are being manipulated and who are often in very difficult circumstances, and to introduce this very conservative, structurally paternalistic and patriarchal force, is inspired. This could just be another demon or another person trying to do a spell or something,
Yeah, no, it's great.
And straight away, how his arc there, we talked about it's an important year for him, how Mr. Trick alludes to is it an election year, and he's like, something like that, kind of alluding to his ascension. And you're 100% right. He comes into it fully formed and menacing, even though he doesn't say anything specifically threatening, but he has an effortless menace, which so often tries to be emulated by people saying weird shit. It's not that. It's a real power of presence in what he does.
Yeah. Can I make one last point before we move into the dusting, Joe? Okay, cool. So I was reading this really wonderful essay this week called Cordelia Chase as Failed Feminist Gesture by Amijo Comfort or Comfort. I'm not 100% certain. I apologize for that. It's just a really interesting essay, and it's actually one of the more want to say one of the more academic essays about Buffy that I've read. It's just well constructed, and it's short. So if anyone wants to have a read of it, just drop us an email. I'll give you a quick photocopy. Anyway, so she just highlights, or they actually, I'm not sure what the gender of this person is. They highlight essentially how Cordelia they mainly talk about. So I'm bringing this up now because this is one of the most prominent Cordelia episodes. Don't think we get too many of them going forward, but they mainly talk about Cordelia and Angel in this essay. But they do highlight in this about this episode. They say they highlight this episode and they say, here Cordelia embodies and even thrives on her feminine traits, while Buffy is weakened by accepting them, which is the basin for the season 3 episode Homecoming. When Buffy decides to run against Cordelia, among others, for Homecoming Queen, the clearest marker of traditional femininity in adolescence, she appears surprisingly vulnerable. Not only does she lose the contest, but she loses her entire support base. Each member joins Cordelia's campaign. Buffy is Scooby-less for the entire episode. As the episode proceeds, it does so in abnormal fashion. Something is not right. Buffy is uncharacteristically vulnerable. That isn't until the end, when she defeats the monsters who have targeted her and Cordelia. So yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, for one thing, it was one of the only things I could find about this episode. People don't really write about this episode, but it's true. When Buffy tries to embrace her femininity, she falters in some ways, and Cordelia, when she embraces her femininity, tends to really succeed. Well,
as her campaign slogan attests, you get more with core.
You sure fucking do. But yeah, and she also then, this essay is really interesting because it highlights essentially Cordelia's treatment in Angel and really, really lambasts it. And I totally fucking agree. The way that, if absolutely nothing else, the way that Cordelia is written off that show was such an injustice. But they're right. No other character in Angel is so often either physically or mentally, and the quotation marks here, raped by demonic forces. Some might object to my use of the word rape, but I do not use it lightly. Rape isn't the unwanted and unsought penetrative and even non-penetrative force exerted over one's body by another who seeks absolute and uncontested physical and emotional control, which is what happens to Cordelia 5 different times within the first 4 seasons of Angel. She's impregnated by demon spawn, blah, 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 and she's impregnated again in season 2. Her mind and body's taken over by the demonic in season 3 episode, that vision thing, and she is taken over completely by the demonic in season 4. So obviously, as we know, she's like, Cordelia as a character isn't actually seen for all of season 3 and 4. Essentially, she's like controlled.
Yeah.
The pattern of Cordelia's consistent subjugation to demon ends with her actually giving birth to Jasmine, a demon goddess, a strange perversion of the Christian Immaculate Conception, and a reminder of old myths about the woman as susceptible to demonic sexual intercourse and the instigator and bringer of evil. So it's just like, yeah, like in completely, but Cordelia is really done bad in Angel, and so it's not something we're going to talk about really, because we're not going to do an Angel podcast if we're fucking lucky. So yeah, just thought I'd bring that up.
No, absolutely, and it's a difficult one because a lot of it's great to see Charisma Carpenter. I think she does great with the material she has, and there is a lot of positivity from her presence, but some of her writing has, I think is well understood to be problematic. Again, not to use that word lightly, and particularly the way she's portrayed with the visions being imparted on her Angel, is as much a vulnerability she has, not a weakness, but she's exposed by it rather than always being able to use it as a strength.
Yeah, exactly. It's a highly masculine show as well, whereas Buffy is a very feminine show.
Yeah, it's a very different program.
Okay, so a couple of quick Buffy bits for you, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Okay, so we see here that one of the weaknesses that Buffy has listed for Cordelia is Bree, and she does mention not liking Bree, as Xander does not in Dead Man's Party, so that's accurate. Oh yeah, in the scene where, in that same scene where they're listing the weaknesses of Cordelia and everyone, you can see that Sarah Michelle Gellar's hand is hidden by her jumper.
Her sleeve, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see a little bit of a bandage poking out. This is because Sarah Michelle Gellar broke her hand during the filming of this episode. So there you go. Oh yeah, and this is one that I brought up to you during the episode, but the scene in the cafeteria where Buffy is asking Oz if she's invisible, and she's saying that she might run for Homecoming Queen, and she finds out that they did the pictures, etc. Willow and Xander are looking very morbid and sad and sheepish, and they're completely sitting at opposite ends of the table. And this is because the scene in which they kiss actually was shot before this and was
makes sense.
scripted to happen before this episode, before the scene. So they're actually like playing out that like guilt in advance of the scene because of editing changes. Essentially, it's just a funny one.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have any Buffy bits there, Joel?
I do. I think when Cordelia mocks Buffy for not having two parents in her life is extraordinarily harsh, even for Cordelia.
Yeah, it's true. I love it.
She also tries to get some nerds to vote for her by presumably quoting back something they've just said, but references that she's been doing the Vulcan death grip for years. The Vulcan death grip is not a thing.
No.
It's a common misconception.
It's
a Vulcan nerve pinch. Vulcans would never design an attack that could kill someone.
That would be the Romulans.
Well, actually,
shut the fuck up, please.
Generally, Romulans can't do it because they're not telepathic for the most part.
Sorry.
But she also does like a Three Stooges thing, or she like starts trying to poke him in the eye, which I only know because they do so much in the Evil Dead films. Also, there's a scene where Giles rushes into the homecoming dance and says, Xander, Willow, something terrible has happened. We need to go Buffy now. And then he says, "Oh no, I'm just joking. I thought I'd give you a scare."
Yeah. Wow.
Where's the hors d'oeuvres? And it's very charming. I continue to be charmed by him. Yeah, I think the last thing I'll mention is that one of the kind of key plot progressions in this episode is when Mr. Trick is arrested by the police and brought to the mayor, and the mayor essentially brings him over onto his team. And I don't feel like there's a lot of justification for why Mr. Trick would allow him to be himself to be taken by a couple of cops.
There is a kind of a suggestion that he's not a very effective vampire, that he's kind of a bit of feet and needs to have his food delivered to him. And
sure, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it makes sense for those two characters to be together, but I think that's a little of a narrative pacing.
I'd agree.
But he does say something interesting about, if basically Mayor Wilkins comes across as very Republican. And initially he seems like he's trying to drive Mr. Trick out of town, and Mr. Trick says, this is all about how, I don't fit into your quiet little neighborhood that shit got tired before as a vampire, again alluding to his status as like one of the kind of few African-American characters who can speak in the show, which I think is quite a solid point. I do find it really highlights that when you have people of color in your show, you immediately realize it immediately adds texture, it adds depth, and you realize how white everything else is, because we totally accept the milieu of the other Scoobies, but as I was saying, we don't know, when they talk about renting a limo, we don't know how much money they have.
Yeah.
And it's probably more than we think it is.
Yeah, because essentially like Xander and Buffy are shown in this show in the first couple of seasons as being the floor of poverty, as in they're like, oh, they're so poor. They both have, like, let's be real, really beautiful houses in California. And then you introduce Faith, who is literally living out of a motel room. So that's a new floor of poverty and stuff. Yeah. So it's a weird one. Should we do some fashion notes?
Fashion?
What? Did you give us a name for this?
No, I didn't. I just said Buffy fashion.
The only useful one. You didn't give us a name. Thanks, Joe.
I thought maybe you might want to contribute something to the show.
I'd prefer not to. Okay, so I have a couple of notes. Willow is wearing a bright blue top at the start of the episode, and she has darts on the outside of her clothes. Do you know what darts are?
I do. I have also watched Project Runway. So.
Yeah, exactly. There's a really passion. No.
Fashion.
Project Runway, exactly. Scott is wearing a cowboy shirt with like a white like trim, like outline thing, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Maybe
like he's having trouble quitting someone.
You sure? Buffy wears a frilly pink shirt at one point with like explosions on her shoulders. They're like puffy, frilly
flamenco dress kind of thing.
Oh, it's the worst. Mr. Trick's clothes that the mayor highlights at one point, they're truly awful. He's wearing like a maroon jacket with like a crimson shirt and an orange tie.
And he wears this in the VHS tape he leaves for the girls. And he wears it against a red curtain. So he's just begging to be green screened out of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, fashion adjacent. But does Willow just have a changing screen that she can cast beautiful silhouettes against in her room at all times? Yeah. Or is this stuff something that she brings out whenever she has boys also changing in her room?
Yeah, I thought that was very incongruous. I didn't think she'd be comfortable with that, except for the scene requiring it. Yeah. Xander wears his cousin Ricky's tux, which obviously is borrowed, but it's too big for him and it just looks bad.
But it's actually like suggested as being making him look very handsome, and it's like, no, not really.
Yeah, no. There's this myth that okay, yes, men have it easier in the sense that often when they wear suits, by virtue of it just being reasonably fitting, it looks well. But too often, this American trope of if a man puts on a tux, he's attractive. He just looks like a waiter.
But one of the weird things is that Americans in the 90s, they wore American cut suits. An American cut of a suit is supposed to make you look boxy and square, essentially, and it just suits fucking no one. So it means that he's also wearing one of these, and that's actually probably intended to be how it looks, and it just looks shit.
And they have Willow wearing what's texturally meant to be a beautiful dress, and she looks great. It's a nice dress, but it's black. It's quite dour for what they're going to.
Willow does also, of course, at one point wear a fluffy orange jumper. She
does. I had that written down. I can only think about how it would feel, and I'm disgusting. I'm very textures really freak me out if they're not the right texture, but also you get so much food in it. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I quite like Buffy's red/orange prom dress though, that she spent all her
year's allowance on.
Yeah.
I have a very visual memory that Cordelia and Buffy wear like orange and green dresses or teal dresses in this like very striking primary colors.
You're right, yeah. And the last point I'll say about fashion is that Oz is wearing a kind of like a velour red blazer, and I don't hate it. I think it actually looks kind of nice.
Yeah, like Seth Green, probably one of the last people who could pull that off.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a death count for this episode. While I'm pulling up the death count, I will give a mention that this is another episode in which Giles gets knocked out by Lyle and Candy, the newly Gorch Candy in the library. Killed in the episode is Kulak of the Meatquack clan, who is killed in a very comical what the wiki describes as a hut explosion. When they shoot a grenade into it, the Gruenstaller twins do. Buffy and Cordelia jump out one side, Kulak tries to jump out the other and hits a boarded up window and dies.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It's very good. Candy Gorch is dusted by Buffy using a spatula that Cordelia lends her, and the Gruenstaller twins shoot each other in a moment of farce but are manipulated to do so by Buffy. So again, I kind of hold her somewhat to account for those two humans dying.
Sure, fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to do the review?
Yeah, so my rating for this episode would be...
no, you said I have to do first this time.
Oh, I did. I did. Go ahead.
Okay, so my rating of this episode for the episode is 8.3 ice packs to shrink my pores out of 10.
Okay, fantastic. From the nurse's office.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Why is that?
So, I actually thought it was really fucking funny. I mean, like, we laughed a bunch watching this episode. Giles was very funny in it, just because he has nothing to do, so he has lots of comedic space. So Buffy goes up to Cordelia at one point and says, "So you're paying people for their votes now?" And Cordelia says, "Is that any tackier than you hanging up all those 'I'm shy but deep' posters everywhere?" And Buffy just responds with, "Yes." Yeah. And it's a wonderful delivery. It's very funny.
Buffy's posters, which I might tweet out, are what's clearly Sarah Michelle Gellar's like dramatic headshot
from 95. Yeah,
and just her name Buffy Summers in like handwriting script underneath. So it's very shot on a beach somewhere.
Yeah. But no, I just thought it was a really funny episode. Not hugely thematic, not very important, and kind of awkward, but I enjoyed it. It was a good old fun.
I'm going to give this episode 9.8 rival podcasts.
9.8, Joel.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. If there's an episode that has a number somewhere highly associated with it, I'm probably going to use a number.
Okay.
But also, I really like this episode. This is one of the episodes, a handful of episodes that jumped to my mind when I thought about doing a Buffy podcast initially, because it's very visual. It has a lot of kind of lore in it. It has funny moments. It allows them to be high schoolers doing a funny high school thing, and I love all of that. It has the Evil Dead cabin in the woods where they get hunted, Slayer Fest 98 and the VHS tape they leave them, the evil German twins. It's just I have a lot of personal affection for it. So maybe objectively it's not a 9.8 for me. I will put this episode in like a top 10 or something of like, just watch these episodes for a flavour of what Buffy is. I just really, really enjoyed it.
Okay, well that's excessive, but fine.
Look, I'm querying the rating here. Okay, so I think that's us for this week. What will we be talking about next week, Brian?
Band Candy.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Band Candy being, just so you can all, as one of my as a colleague I worked with as an indefined time in the past, so I'm not liable, we used to say, let's get jizzed up about this. So Band Candy is the episode where Ethan Rain returns. There's some cursed candy that turns all the adults into your teenage personalities.
Most notably Giles and
Joyce.
Yeah.
And it is a heck of a lot of fun. Okay, so thanks Super Fangs, and we will see you next time on Buffy Boys.
Say Super Fangs.
I said Super Fangs. Yeah,
that's funny.
Thank you.
Okay. Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
See you.
See ya.
Bye.